Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, I'm going to be giving all my thoughts about this new Plunderstorm mode that came out. Now, this is Thursday when I'm making this video, and I was going to do this video Tuesday, and I tried to do it Wednesday. And basically what happened is I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to try to condense them into this video without making it too long. It's going to be too long. But basically, I have a lot of expansive thoughts on this because, one, I think about the game a lot, and two, this unintentionally hit on something that I have talked about before that I think is very, very important. So when I first hear the news of Plunderstorm, I'm a little bit disappointed. If you watch my This Week in WoW video, I talked about how I wanted a Vampire Survivors mode. I thought that would be really, really cool. This wasn't that, so I was a little bit disappointed. However, I get into the game and I go, holy crap, except for the Battle Royal part, this is exactly what I suggested for WoW PvP. Like, not a little bit, this was exactly what I suggested for WoW PvP in multiple videos. This less buttons, less everything, right? This is what I suggested. I honestly couldn't believe it. So I get into the game. I see that there's like 7 total buttons. One's an item. And I like that they are set, right? One's a heal. This could potentially be a shield later on or something too. One's a melee. And then you have 2 attack spells, 2 utility spells, stuff like that. This is basically exactly what I was thinking of when I had my own idea about how to make WoW PvP better. And so I got into it, and I absolutely love this. I think this is really, really cool and really, really fun. Battle Royals aren't really my thing. I am pretty decent at them. Like I've won my fair share game of Fortnite and stuff like that, despite being an older guy here. I've won, I do pretty well at BRs. I'm pretty decent at shooting games, so I'm gonna be decent at a battle royal or whatever. But I got into it. I love it, and it's really, really great. Now, I do want to address something towards the start of the video before we get too far into it, and that's that. Like, I totally get that PvE players were underwhelmed with this, right? I'm a PvE player, right? My initial thing was being underwhelmed too. I am mostly a PvE player, I should say. And I totally get that. So 10.2.6, it didn't really have any updates to the main game. It's a separate client. Maybe you're just a pure WoW absolutist. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutists in every game. And you're like, well, this isn't quite World of Warcraft. It's kind of World of Warcraft, but I don't have my class. I don't have my spells. I totally get that 100%. So it's like, I'm not saying you're wrong if you weren't excited about this, but I would say to listen to the rest of the video, maybe be open to some other things that this could bring in. So let's talk specifically about the PvP section now. So we addressed kind of like the PvE player concerns and stuff like that, but let's talk specifically about PvP. So in my previous videos, I said the reason why PvP is bad is there's too much CC, there's too many buttons. You have to memorize what your opponent's buttons are because you need to know what they're doing to you, right? So I need to memorize 30 spells that a paladin has, or 20 spells that a paladin has, whatever. I need to memorize 20 spells that a warrior has, and 20 spells that a priest has, and 100 spells that a druid has. I need to know what they are when they get updated. I need to know their new talent trees. I need to know all their specs. I need to know everything about these things. And then I need to also have add-ons that tell me how to counter those things quickly, because it's too hard to do the math in my head. So the weak war tells me they use this, so I use that. And this and that, and you just have all, and then of course just 15 years of information, 20 years of information, 10 years of information, however long people have played, and you have all this stuff put together, and it makes PvP completely inaccessible. On top of that, you have to level your character, you have to grind out the gear. That is part of World of Warcraft. I'm not against that, and nor do I think they should get rid of that out of the main game. However, it's extremely inaccessible to new players, whereas this is extremely accessible to new players. You could put this Plunderstorm mode on PlayStation, Xbox, mobile, Steam, wherever you would put it, and it would be successful because it is actually just fun, right? That was their goal, was to make something fun, and they actually succeeded. And while you might not like BRs and you might not like the style of game, there are thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that would like it, and they would play it. and this is very easy to make and very easy to put out, and so it would be very successful on their end to do so. And so I think that that accessibility can actually make PvP grow back in WoW. If you look at the WoW player base, while the player base is generally shrinking, although, you know, fairly slowly, I think a lot of that is the PvP player base shrinking out, whereas the PvE player base can sometimes even have an influx of new players and actually go up slightly, you know, over time. The PvP player base has continued to crater out, and this allows that to be different. So when you're in the main mode, which we'll see soon as I probably get devoured by a storm or something here, when you log in, you have the regular game now, and you can click on the Plunderstorm client. I'll call it a client. I don't know if that's the proper verbiage, but I'll call it a client. You can click on the Plunderstorm client, and then it takes you here to Plunderstorm, and this is what it is. Now, when I say to be open-minded, what I mean by that is eventually, and there has been, so I'm very excited about this if you can't tell by my voice, there are devs already asking, what other game modes should we put on this? Again, I'm going to use the word client. What other game modes should we put here? One thing I would love to put here is the Vampire Survivors mode, right? Now, I would want it to be more class-based, but you could also put an arena mode, a battleground mode, this mode, that mode. You can put all kinds of modes here. Now, it's one criticism I do have is make it more class fantasy-based. So, I think for Plunderstorm, for this Battle Royal, the way it's set up is actually perfect already. I wouldn't want to have class stuff in here. It'd be too hard to balance 60 people. It'd be ridiculous, right? But I would like to see some class fantasy if they made like an arena mode and stuff like that. By that I mean you have some of your spells that are basically from the traditional game. So like a charge for a warrior, a mortal strike for a warrior, a whatever, a movement speed of divine steed for paladin, right? To make all the paladins so happy. It would be hard with things like druids, right? Simplifying them down to these buttons. The way I was thinking about it, you'd queue as one type of druid, so like a feral druid, and then you could have one other form, and then you could just cast all your spells from either form, and that's just kind of how you would have to do it for that to make it simpler. But you could have all these other modes with class fantasy baked in. It would be more hard. Instead of 20 spells to balance, it's 400 or 500 spells to balance. It's a lot more, of course. A lot more work, but they could do that, and I think they could do it successfully. It's still a lot less than the main game, right? And they have an idea of how to balance it from the main game. Throughout all of this, even though we have this separate, what I'm calling client, I don't want them to get rid of the stuff on the main game. Still have arena on the main game, still have gladiator in the main game, still have AWC if people are still watching it, still have all that stuff on the main game, but then you have all this other stuff on this client. And I think what happens on this client is you open yourself up to like these more cool, watchable experiences. And I'm not a big esports fan, right? And I know a lot of the WoW player base hates esports. I don't hate esports. I'm just not a big fan of it. But this stuff is really watchable. I could watch somebody play Plunderstorm. I would watch somebody just do arenas of this and stuff like that. It's just really cool. It's really accessible. You're not lost as a viewer because you kind of understand it innately. It's basically like taking League of Legends the number of abilities in League of Legends, some of the types of abilities, like it's taking a MOBA and putting it into the Warcraft universe essentially. And you might be like, well, isn't that Heroes of the Storm? Well, kind of, but you're actually in World of Warcraft. You're in Arethi Highlands. I mean, you quite literally are in Arethi Highlands here. So I want to see these. I want to see cool game modes get put into this client where you have this pruned down version. This gets new players in to try it out because it's very accessible. It gets, old players who don't have time, just ability to go in and play. Yes, like the PvP player base, yes, more people are going to want to do this than the regular PvP in the game. It just is what it is. The regular PvP in the game has been declining for many reasons. But some of which are just that it's hard. The PvP brain doesn't mesh well with the MMO brain, especially in 2024 when there's so many different games to get that PvP part of your brain to be happy. For me personally, when I like to PvP, I like to play shooting games for PvP. A lot more than I like to play World of Warcraft for PvP. However, this game mode kind of fits that need for me where I can just log in and go play. Like when let's just use Halo as an example, Halo Infinite. I can just log into Halo and play. I don't have to level my character or do anything like that. Same thing with any shooter, right? Like it's not exclusive to one. That's just how they work. But I just overall, I'm so happy. I have so many thoughts about this, and I think this could just overall be really cool for the game if they just dive into it, put all these game modes in, have you know, 5, 6 options, eventually add more, swap some out, put new ones in, have these different game modes on this client, but keep everything else on the old client too. Like I still like, it's still cool to have PvP on the old client with all your abilities and stuff like that. It's just, it's not for everybody, and but still keep it there for those who like to do it. I'm sure there's still tens or hundreds of thousands of people who, you know, enjoy battlegrounds on the actual World of Warcraft client. Never get rid of that. Just add this too, and I think both can exist pretty happily, because I think this is going to, I don't think people are going to quit. People who like World of Warcraft, Dragonflight, retail World of Warcraft aren't going to quit retail World of Warcraft to play this, except for maybe some PvP players. Like when they add more PvP modes, that I could see happening, but that's fine. Like they're still sub to the game. Yes, they are disconnected, but they're already disconnected anyways. Like I think that's just a reality we have to face. Is like PvP players are not connecting with the overall player base of World of Warcraft. They craft as little as possible. They, you know, they do world activities as little as possible. They want to get in and queue their games. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is a way that they can actually do that, is by playing on this client. So I understand if some people leave. However, you will be collecting your rewards. You know, that you can have customization on this as well, but you'll be mostly collecting your cool rewards like mounts and stuff like that on your main character on the actual game too. So you might want to just experience that. But I could probably just go on talking about this for hours. Like I could do like a live stream and just talk about this. But I'll end the video here on my thoughts of Plunderstorm. Overall, I give it like an A, or maybe an A-, but only because I would want to see them add more class fantasy at some point, even if it's not in right now. But yeah, absolutely hit it out of the ballpark. Let's get a Vampire Survivors PvE mode on this as well. Let's get some other stuff going as well. But this is actually really, really cool, and I totally approve of it. And I will hopefully have more stuff to say on this in the future going forward. So sorry it took me so long to even make a video about this, but like I said, I didn't know how to make the video. I just have so many thoughts on this. But that's it for this one. Finally, as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. That helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody have a good one.